Hey everybody, today I am going to be reviewing Love Lies Bleeding. This was directed by Rose Glass. This is her second feature-length film after Saint Maud, which was a film that gained some notice, some critical acclaim, and I think just stylistically it piqued a lot of people's interest so far as, like, what would she tackle next as a subject. And I think there are elements to that aesthetic for her that create kind of a streamline of viscera that goes all the way through the movie, and it's tightening at certain points and then it's releasing at other times, and I don't know, I thought that was cool. Just as a hazy sort of feeling throughout the movie, and it can steer you in some very unexpected directions. It can kind of ram you into very unexpected directions, and that too is quite intriguing. But, there's always a but with me. For me, unfortunately, the film does suffer from a lot of the same problems that I have with that kind of A24 art housey aesthetic-y type of branding. To me, it's very creative and unique in certain ways, and I like to see some of it, but I think ultimately, just overall, it muffles so much of the heart of the piece, what it's really trying to say so far as its thesis. And the thing is, I can see a core there, like potential for one. It's like way in the distance, it's a little bit opaque, but I want to bring it forward. But unfortunately, there's just so much padding so far as the cinematic clout, and it doesn't open the story up into interesting directions so far as depth for me. That said, it's a fun film. Honestly, I was very on board with it for the first third of the movie, maybe the first half of the movie, was really enjoying it. I was emotionally connected to a lot of what was going on. But unfortunately, when it relies too much on those genre staples as it goes, it feels like the actual movie itself is starting to taper off so far as what it means, especially when it comes to like the grit, the shock, the shifty nature of the story. It's just not sinking its teeth into me enough. And the thing is I really wanted it to, because I think these are very intriguing characters. Honestly, I would love to see a film about each one singularly, and I think the performances here, all of them are fantastic. And I think the premise is really interesting, at least the perceived premise. I try not to go into movies knowing a bunch if I can help it at all, but so when I went into this movie, I didn't know that much, and I guess I was expecting more a singular kind of subversive love story between two women, and one of them happens to be, a bodybuilder. And I like the idea of exploring two women emotionally through their relationship with each other, because, obviously it's different than a man and a woman, and submissive and dominant is going to be different here, or we're going to have to explore it in a different way. Those elements are going to shift around unexpectedly so far as power dynamics are concerned. And, having Kristen Stewart just walking around that gym, and she's got like the cut-off shirts and the mullet. I just like to see it. I love the way that they set up her character, and I love that this takes place in the 1980s, that filter of like machismo, 80s era pop culture, and how that kind of feeds into the subversion of this particular story with the women. But actually, this is a mix of two stories. I mean, on one hand, yes, you do have the love story between the two women, but that kind of gets sucked into this bigger family drama that has all of this corruption and duplicity that's going on in the shadow, crimes and such, of the patriarchy. And that idea just represents all kinds of different things, but I think on just a basic level, it's about the complex ways our familial roots either tie us down, or they cause us to act out in a certain way, or it could be a combination of the two. The things we do for love, but also the things we do for family, just because they are our family, regardless of the moral conundrums. But these two stories do collide, and the movie does start to become more of a revenge tale, a la like Thelma and Louise or something like that. But I would say the story, it starts to build more with the visual concepts and the plot twist. The more it does that, the more I feel myself losing the heart of the family dynamic and the heart of the love story. And I think what would have helped is if we just dialed back the abstractions, or at least we were a little bit less liberal with how we use them, and we focus a little bit more on the introspection. Open up the heart of the story, just because these characters, as interesting as they are, they're just caught up in this whirlwind, as I said, of cinematic tropes. And the love, whether it is familial or romantic, it does become secondary to the experience of the film. And when I say experience, I use the term experience a lot, but I think you can use that in a good way and then in a pretentious way. And I think in this instance, there is a little bit of pretension. I mentioned the performances. They are all fantastic, really, all of them. I can't think of one bad apple in the bunch. I really love people like Jenna Malone and Dave Franco. They have kind of smaller parts, but they do have their moments as side characters. But the three main characters, obviously, Kristen Stewart's character, the Ed Harris character, the Jackie character, the girlfriend, they stole the show for me, all of them. Kristen Stewart really carries this film, and for a film that is so wild so far as energy, the fact that she can do that, I think, shows just how talented that she is. I think she's really established herself more as a movie star, in the sense that she does have a persona, or at least a personality as a celebrity that we recognize, and we can see it kind of leaking in here. Stewart herself, she's always had this kind of introverted, very clinched, awkward presence to her, and it's like it's almost painful when she's trying to just express herself or explain something. It's like having to pull teeth probably to get her to be vulnerable. And when she's playing the character very similarly to herself, she kind of has this, chip on her shoulder where she feels uncomfortable in every environment that she's in, other than when she is, with her girlfriend. The fact that there's so little revealed about Lou, the Kristen Stewart character, and there's so little revealed about Jackie so far as backstory, specificities, those two actresses really have to do all of the heavy lifting. They've got to do all of that background work themselves, where they have to bring the character to life for us, where we believe them, that we believe that they have gone through some really heartbreaking things that we don't get to see as audience members. That is what keeps the emotions afloat. It's what keeps the film, I think, in color. Kristen and just her kind of bewildered jadedness, and you contrast that with Jackie, the girlfriend, who has this kind of spirited essence, almost innocent, but it's not innocent. She clearly has a very tragic backstory herself. But so far as when they start to meet and they start to fall in love and all of that, there were aspects of that I did like, but unfortunately, I think a lot of the problem there is that they decided to build their characters more, again, through the external emotion and less through the actual, building of the characters. For example, there are several sex scenes that sort of establish the romantic connection between our characters, and quite frankly, I didn't care for them. Now, I know people are probably going to assume why I don't care for them, but no, I don't think it's for the reason you think. I found them kind of boring and lacking in creativity. I can't remember. I think there's maybe 3 of them, but there was only one of them that actually felt like it had some meaning. It felt like it was actually driving the story forward in an interesting way. The rest of them, yeah, they just felt kind of gratuitous. It's the one that really reveals something to us about both characters, especially the Kristen Stewart character, where, she has a moment where she may have to reveal something. It's a conflict moment. She may have to be vulnerable here, but she chooses not to be. She chooses instead to become dominant in a sexual way. There's a weariness and almost a frailty. I shouldn't say frailty, but she is naturally the more submissive one to her girlfriend, obviously. But here, no, she is taking control of it. And I think that says a lot about her character. I would have loved to learn more about Jackie as an example, and we could have seen that a little bit through the sex scenes, absolutely, but I would just like to see it just in her dialogue and her behavior, because I really don't understand her very much. I don't understand what motivates her and what sparks her love interest in Lou necessarily, and vice versa. And I'm just less interested again in generic sex scenes that are used as the framework for building our characters. I would much rather see these women, through pillow talk at the grocery store, simple things like that. I'm a lot less interested in seeing Jackie have this like surreal psychedelic experience when she's shooting up with roids. I'm more interested again in why she's doing those things. And it's like, why does her character arrive at this point in the story? We don't really know, because she is quite impulsive. And while I'm watching all of this, like trippy type of stuff, like it's all very kind of paint by the numbers on the nose. And really I'm like, yeah, but what is this saying about, again, their new relationship and how it's serving Lou and how it's going to serve, again, her family dynamic in the future of the story? All of that postmodern psychedelic type of filmmaking that we see a lot in A24 movies, I think if you want to go that route, it can be fantastic. It's very tough. It's great for your special effects department. It gives them a chance probably to be creative in ways that they aren't normally, and it's probably great for your art department. But I actually think it reveals a little bit of laziness on the part of the screenwriter, at least in my view. That's just my own estimation, just because I feel like it's an inability to face the internal questions of your story. I had the same problem with Beau is Afraid last year. Now, that's a film I think is way more interesting as a piece, way more ambitious and all of that. But ultimately, it just felt like, again, a lot of cinematic puffery, and then we're just kind of connecting the dots ourselves so far as the motivations of the characters. And I just do miss a little bit of that. I miss a nod to the classicists of the old times. People who just really understood how to structure a story where everything felt really balanced and clean. I do think Ed Harris is fantastic in this movie. Honestly, he might be my favorite in the movie, though that's tough. I really liked a lot of them. Man, he's just such a star, an actor. He's assertive, he's hardened, he's really intimidating as a presence. And that directness and that cold clinical quality that he has in the character, yes, it's really interesting, mixed with that like charisma, like the deep voice and all of that. He's a perfect villain for this movie. He always creates this hint of caring, that paternal aspect, always just as a subtle undercurrent. But again, there's that callous kind of brutality on the top of it that is very intriguing. I just wish there was more of an anchor point that satisfied me so far as building that character. I am not against abstractions in film or like surrealist filmmaking. If you're a regular of this channel, you know that. You know I tend to be a champion of those things when they are done well. They tend to be some of my favorite things in movies. I just think these days we are capitalizing on a trend of it where it's becoming more a gimmick than anything else. Just structurally, from a story building perspective, it's very hard, I think, to find the process and the payoff through all of those kind of dreamy metaphors, especially when they can be a little bit redundant. Often they do feel a little bit aimless and just flourishy for the sake of being flourishy. I don't think that it's necessarily aimless in this film, but I do think it is a little bit too flourishy. David Lynch, as an example, is a master of like surrealist filmmaking and that sort of thing. I think he's probably the most accessible example I could think of. And I see a lot of filmmakers, it's like they're trying to meet Lynch, where he is, but it's like they don't have the comprehension of it on his level. I feel like with his movies, everything is connected like a lung. You can feel just like the blood pumping through the veins always. With this one, it's kind of spotty. But really, I think it just depends on your taste with this film. I am recommending the film, but just kind of cautiously. It has an attitude to it, it has momentum to it, and it has a wild energy to it. It has a sexy sort of packaging that is unique. All of that is fun. And even though there is kind of a cinematic trendiness to it, I do think that it has some real merit to it as well. Definitely not a bad film. It's just, it suffers from some underdevelopment and a lack of pathos that felt really sturdy at the core of it. All of that just really frustrates me, and it frustrates me just because I really saw some strong potential in these characters. You'll probably have fun with it if you're the type of person who loves a story that takes you in all these different directions where you end up somewhere you never thought you were going to end up. But for me, the more that it leaned into that kind of crafty, shifty nature of the plot twist, that's when it started to feel more and more cold to me. That said, I am very intrigued by Rose Glass, and I am actually quite curious to see what she comes up with next. So yeah, that is my review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website. As always, it is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist. I do commission portraits, and I sell prints of my work. If that's something that you're into, you can always go to the website below. And if you have a question about a commission or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons who are great. Guys, thank you so much for your support. If you are interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.